Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friends Talk Money. I'm Pam Kruger, co-host of Money Track on public television and founder of WealthRamp.com.
I'm Richard Eisenberg, a personal finance writer and editor, and formerly the editor of the Money and Work channels for the PBS site for people over 50, nextavenue.org.
And I'm Terry Savage, nationally syndicated personal finance columnist and the author of The Savage Truth on Money.
We're three friends who like to talk money and all the issues that come with it.
On this podcast, we're trying to help you understand your personal finances
to get you and your retirement on the right path for true financial peace of mind.
You know, we've talked a lot on Friends Talk Money about helping your grandkids by putting money in a 529 college savings fund for them. What about the other financial parts of being a grandparent, especially a first-time grandparent? That's what we're going to talk about today, and I confess the reason is partly selfish. I just became a first-time grandfather myself. Thank you.
Minutes ago. Congratulations, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, I'm in Los Angeles today because that's where our grandchild lives. But I spoke to a bunch of grandparenting experts and shared their advice in a piece that I wrote about grandparenting for MarketWatch. Today, we're going to share some of that advice with you, and Pam and their thoughts and advice as well. Now, Pam, you're not a grandparent, but I know you have a lot of friends and relatives who are. And Terry, you are a grandmother. Maybe you can tell us, what was it like when you first became one, and any thoughts about the financial side of grandparenting you want to share?
Well, as you now know, and as any grandparent will tell you, there is absolutely nothing like that first moment. I became a grandparent of twin girls 13 years ago. So
Wow.
I had one to hold automatically, and that solved a lot of potential problems. And today they are both taller than I am. Not so short, but they're tall, and they're wonderful and darling girls, and they're 13. Now, let's not wait. You'll know this pretty soon. Pretty soon, you're just always show. How's your granddaughter? Oh, here's 5 pictures. So let's not do that today. We're supposed to be financial. And if some emotion sneaks in, well, so be it. Congratulations, Richard. And
Thank you.
I think that's great. And Pam, for you will be a loving, probably great aunt or something like that to a bunch of young children of your friends' children. So you'll get all the joy and none of the responsibilities. So the first thing I did after all that emotional stuff, and I had to go back, I was on TV every day then and be on TV, and I put the pictures on TV, much to my kids' consternation. So Richard, I'm going to let you talk about this, but I have that moment, that picture on my desk right here. And I said, Richard, you just showed us a picture. And first, before we do anything else, tell me what you said about showing pictures of your grandchildren, because I was ready to do it.
Yeah, I said I didn't think I was going to do that, not because I don't want everybody to see her, but because I want to respect the preferences of my son and his wife. And they would prefer that I not put pictures up without their permission and not say anything that might be on the internet. So I'd rather keep this a little general.
Okay, so that's really important. Before we talk about financial things, I went, well, wow, you're right, because I was going to grab a picture off my desk of when they were born. I think that's really important. And we're talking about finances today, but I particularly think you want to make sure that you're not sharing this enthusiasm as I did immediately on TV that day they were born. You got to be very careful about that. Okay, so what's the financial thing I did? You know what I did. I opened up a 529 college savings account immediately. And you know that if you really want to jumpstart that kind of a 529 account, we've done podcasts on it, you're allowed to contribute up to, at one time, up to 5 years of the currently allowable $17,000 a year gift. You can put all 5 years in at once. So if you really want to jumpstart a college plan, $85,000, just call Fidelity or Vanguard. Or if your state gives a tax deduction on state taxes for a contribution, it won't be for that much. Illinois gives, for example, its Bright Start plan. Illinois is the 529 plan, allows you to deduct up to $10,000 of contributions every year on your state income taxes. But so the first thing you do is open a 529 account. In case anybody out there has missed it, that's a kind of account that lets the money go tax-free for college down the road, any school, any state. It doesn't matter which state's plan you're in. And you also want to avoid custodial accounts. I just throw this in for a minute, because when the child turns 18, it becomes his or her money. You were thinking Princeton, she's thinking of Portia, and that's what happens. So you definitely want to start a 529, and you can start them with $1,000 at most plans, and then ever after for graduation or birthdays or holidays, you can put in $500 and keep adding to it. So that's the first financial tip for grandparents. After you get over this immediate joy and euphoria, which I think you're still in, judging from the smile on your face, Richard, then you start thinking about college. It's 18 years away. Start now.
Yeah, I'll say one thing about that, and Pam, I really want to hear from you. I actually had some money left over from the 529 college fund that I created for my son, who's now the father of his granddaughter. And so what I'm doing is going to transfer that money over from the account that he could have used but didn't need to the account for his daughter. So I'm going to keep it in the family, and there's already some money ready for her whenever she needs it one day. Pam, I'm wondering, what are you thinking about what grandparents should be thinking about and maybe doing financially?
Well, I mean, there's no question about it. I think that the 529 plan is like the king or the queen of the financial gifts that a grandparent can give, a new grandparent can give to their brand new grandchild, because of the versatility. And I am not a grandmother, but I am a grand auntie, and I have ideas on financial gifts. And sometimes one of us always goes in a direction that's more financial, and then the other goes in a different direction a little bit. So here's where I feel like the value of financial literacy comes in. So it's not necessarily the amount of money toward college or toward their first house or toward jumpstarting their savings, but to recognize that in this brand new role, as a grandparent, and as the child grows, you are the equivalent of an influencer in your grandchild's life. They're going to look up to you. What you say, how you say it, what you do, it matters. So I believe that it's important to recognize that you may have power, a real power to improve your grandchildren's aptitude toward money. And if you didn't do it with your own kids, this is your chance. So remember, grandparents send the birthday cards with money, and then they later, used to, back in the old days, it would be a savings bond when you turned 8 years old. Those memories, at least for me, they stick, because that's someone who cared about you, but you feel a little bit disconnected. Now, just thinking about getting an understanding of what money is really about, and getting that education by spending time as your grandchild gets into their grade school years, not too early to start thinking about really, helping shape them into financially literate little beings.
Thank you. That's so important. I am now a long distance grandparent, because my new granddaughter and her parents live in Los Angeles, but I live in New Jersey. And I'm sad about not being able to see her as much as I'd like to in person, but I'm also concerned a little bit about the costs of long distance grandparenting, things like flights to and from Los Angeles, and staying in an Airbnb for a week or more at a time, which we're doing now and we're happy to do. But over time, that's going to get expensive if we do it a lot. And I'm hoping we are going to do it fairly often. I spoke to two experts about this. One is Carrie Byrne. She's the creator of a really great website called Long Distance Grandparent. And the other is Dee Dee Moore, and she has something called More Than Grand. That's a platform for grandparents. They're really great places to go if you're looking for advice about grandparenting. Carrie Byrne told me that long distance grandparenting can be a real financial hardship for some grandparents who can't afford to travel often to see their grandchildren. And when I asked Dee Dee Moore any advice about this, she said, if you can visit every 3 months or so for 5 days or more, you should try to do that if you can, to grow the bond between you and your grandchild. And when you can't be there in person, she said, try to FaceTime or call as often as you can. So I wonder, Terry and Pam, any advice you have for long distance grandparents? And Terry, I think you're one of those as well, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My official place of residence is in Florida. I was smart enough to make it relatively close to Disneyland. So when they were younger, believe me, or Disney World, I should say, my house was the Mecca. And I was guaranteed visits, a couple of visits during the winter. But there's a better answer to long distance grandparenting, and it doesn't start too young. Zoom, what we're doing here today and putting this together. Your little grandchildren will become more tech savvy than you can possibly imagine at a very early age. And so you can start a regular Zoom with your family, whether it's Sunday mornings or whatever time it is. That's a habit for them to get into. My experience is they don't discriminate so much between the grandma or grandpa that's on the Zoom screen and the one that's in the room. I mean, you don't get to give hugs, but you can give sort of hugs via Zoom. We live in a technology world. So yes, start early with Zoom. That'll save a lot of the costs of those trips.
Yeah, and the only thing I can add to the long distance piece of it is I have friends right now, like my good friends right now, who this weekend they're trying to figure out, because they have a brand new grandchild and they are in Brooklyn, and the grandparents are here on Cape Cod, and her husband can't travel as well as he used to. So not only do you have the expense part of it, but now you have a limitation. So the adult children with the child have to come see the parents, and right now they're figuring it out and working it out, and everybody's different. Everybody's got a different relationship, but I think that what I'm seeing with my friend, for example, is they're really making it a big priority to set the stage, because they don't want to miss the magic moments. And so they're just like figuring it out now, instead of just letting it roll along and time goes by and they don't get to see them. So they're just sitting down and they're just saying, let's just deal with this right now. You guys aren't here. Dad can't travel. So, how can we make this work? We got to negotiate.
Let me add a little bit about the technology. I bet you're not on Instagram, and I wouldn't be even for business.
A little bit.
Yeah, okay. But even toddlers have these special iPads that they can get stuff on. And they are very able to log in, and with certain restrictions that their parents said, they're not just running all over the world. So you might have to learn some new technology. Forget Zoom. You may have to learn Instagram. They have on their iPads, they have messaging. So you will be very shocked at how young they are once you start this relationship. If you're not around, I mean, I don't care what business call I'm on or doing or getting ready to do a TV show or radio. If I see a message from one of my granddaughters, it's like, wait, that jumps to the top of your priority list. So you may have to up your technology quotient. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right. Well,
Good
I'm
point.
ready for that, but thanks for the advice. Thank you. So we talked about 529 plans, a little bit about custodial accounts. Anything else on the financial side of grandparenting that either of you want to talk about before we talk about some other things like purpose in grandparenting? But how about the money side?
Yeah, I am not going to disagree that custodial accounts can be problematic, because the assets really do belong to the child. And when they turn 18, they can do whatever they want with those. But I am going to argue for the point that, thank God, the custodial account does exist, because in my own life, and I mentioned this before, that I love to mentor young kids. And in this case, I've seen where the grandparent and the grandchild together open a small account and they invest side by side. So it's not a custodial account where you're hands off and you're just not talking to your grandchild about it. It's a tool that can really help you get close. So Acorns, I know Terry, really, you like Acorns.
That's
really
right.
Acorns. I do Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. They all offer different spins on this without a lot of money. The point is to use it as a teaching and a way to get closer to your kid, to your grandkid, and talking about money and helping them eventually get into the driver's seat, thinking about saving, spending, and investing their own money. And there's no right way to co-manage an investing account with your grandchildren. You just have to consider, what are your intentions with opening this account? What are your intentions?
One more point about that. And yes, you're right. There used to be ShareBuilder. Acorns is really the place to do it now. But remember that any money held in a custodial account weighs 7 times more heavily against the family in the financial aid formula when you go to file the FAFSA form, free application for federal student aid. So, I mean, if you're going to pay for their whole college education, that's not a problem, or the parents have enough money to do it. But if you're going to file for federal financial aid, you do not want money in a custodial account for your child. Here's what I want to talk about though, Richard. I want to give you a bridge. This does not come from my vast financial background. It comes from my limited grandparenting background. But I'm going to give you a tip that surprised me. It might lead to where I know you want to go next, Richard. I thought twice about saying this. My relationship with my own grandmother was probably the most important relationship in my young life. I mean, it wasn't that she was so indulgent, but she was always there for me. And when my family and I had 2 other siblings couldn't afford my horseback riding lessons, it was my grandmother that did stuff like that. And so I always assumed I would replicate the incredibly wonderful relationship I had with my own grandmother, whose words come to mind all the time, not financial, but whose sayings about life, whatever they were, come to my mind at least once a day in one way or another. So I figured that's exactly the kind of grandma I was going to be. And I want to open your eyes to a different possibility, okay, which took me a few years to figure out. Just sort of like you're talking about, well, the kids don't want us to post pictures. My parents had they were not from great money. And my grandmother, as I said, was generous, and she wasn't from great money either. And today's parents are doing the job that grandparents used to do. My experience is they indulge the kids with anything. It started when they wanted designer clothes at age 5. I mean, there is no way for you to financially or even travel-wise indulge your grandchildren to build that relationship if your kids are already indulging them. Instead, you may find yourself tempted to be the one that says, table manners. I mean, things happen that my mother would never let happen at a dining room table. And I found myself instead being my mother. Girls, put your feet down. Girls, don't talk with your mouth full. And all of a sudden the roles were reversed. And I didn't want to be that grandmother, the mean grandmother that knew the rules of all the things that I wanted them to be, young ladies. And so I caution you, whether it's about financial things or in your relationship, your kids, this generation of kids having kids, is the most indulgent of their children. And you cannot overindulge and beat your kids at that game. And you might have to bite your tongue because you don't want to be the one last person that remembers manners and so forth. It's a tough lesson to learn. So after you have your joy, Richard, just sit back and get the lay of the land and pick your spots where you can say things directly to your grandchildren that will make a difference. That's my 2 cents from 13 years of grandparenting twins. I have nothing more to say on the other side of grandparenting. So Richard, take it away.
Well, thank you for all that advice. And one thing I have learned from my research, also just by talking to other friends of mine who are grandparents, is not to offer unsolicited advice. If they ask for advice, feel free to offer it if they would like it. You can make suggestions, in a pleasant way, but don't basically tell them how to do it because they don't want to hear that, and they'll do it the way they want to do it. And so I'm going to do my best to hold my tongue. If there are times that I think I want to say something, I'm just
going to check back with you in a year and see how this is.
Right. Let me know how well. You can ask my son. But one thing I was thinking about, Terry, as you were talking about your own grandmother and her lessons, I just read a great book that I want to mention. That's not really about grandparenting, but it relates to this. It's a new book called The Book of Charlie, and it's by a Washington Post writer named David Von Drell. And he wrote this book. It just came out. It's a New York Times bestseller. I interviewed him recently. And it's all about a man named Dr. Charlie White, who had been his neighbor in Kansas City for the last 7 years of Charlie White's life. And he died when he was 109. And this book is all about the lessons we can all learn from older people. And I want to mention to people, if they're looking for a kind of a book where you can learn from elders, that's a really great book. But let me get back to grandparenting for a second. I want to talk a little bit about purpose and meaning. Really important to talk about. I really think that being a first-time grandparent can add meaning and purpose to your life, especially when you're retired. I know it's true already for me, and it's true for a lot of grandparents that I've been talking with. And there was a recent survey of retirees by the financial services firm Edward Jones and the Age Wave consulting firm. And they found that grandmothers and grandfathers said that becoming a grandparent was their most fulfilling windfall, which I thought was really sweet. I talked to another guy named Aaron Larson. He runs something called the grandparentsacademy.com. It's a website that offers advice for grandparents. He told me that he thinks it's beautiful when people reaching retirement reinvest in their grandchildren. He says it can change their grandchildren's lives forever. I think that's what Terry was getting at. And it can be a powerful source of fulfillment for grandparents. So I wonder, Terry, as somebody who's been living this, anything you can say about the meaning and purpose that being a grandmother has given to you?
Well, you get to a stage in life where you go, this is it. Here's my retirement numbers. Here's everything. It's planned. I ought to be okay, or maybe I won't be okay, but I'll keep working, kind of a thing. And it's all about numbers. And when I was young, I was going to change the world. I mean, don't ask about me in my 20s protesting. But the point is, you kind of give that up thinking that you could change the world. You vote, or you get disgusted, but you never don't vote. But you kind of give up on changing the world, and you're focused on your own life and your family's life. And when you become a grandparent, I think it changes your whole perception, your perception of the environment, your perception of the planet, your perception of the impact of today's politics on the future, whatever your politics are. You just get a bigger view of the future. It opens, it's like stepping through a door and opening a new window, and you start caring again more. It's so trite, but about the world we leave our grandchildren. You want your Social Security check, but you realize what a burden we're placing on tomorrow's our grandchildren's working lives, and things like that. You just look at things differently.
Interesting. Yeah. And Richard, for me,
Yeah.
I guess money and financial literacy maybe aren't the first things you think about when you have your first grandchild is born. But, and it wouldn't be for me, I don't think, but it doesn't take too long to figure out how important a life skill, handling money, is going to be for that grandchild. So I think that I would want to ask, how can I help? How can I help with that? How can I help contribute to this child's life, not only by, hopefully my contributions to help set this child up for success in the future financially, but really help this child become financially independent and financially empowered and confident about managing and borrowing, saving and investing money. And I think that's a huge gift. I just think it's something that, it's just good to have that in mind, when you're thinking about your intention of what you want to do for this grandchild.
Thanks. Terry, you mentioned before about taking your granddaughters to Disney World. And I have to say, one of the things I'm really
I won't go anymore. I just want I'm glad they've outgrown it. I want you to know what happens when they're 13.
Why won't you go anymore?
Oh God, you only go so many times.
Oh,
everybody out there who's been.
My mother took the grandkids to Disney World in Florida when she was 90, and she was wearing heels around the whole. I mean,
God bless her, but you don't.
Mother.
And here's what happened this last spring. The girls were given a choice. You want to go to a park, or do you want to go shopping at what's a great store that they're all into? And anyway, they took the shopping trip. So we're going to spend a lot of money at Disney, or you're going to go to Lululemon.
Oh, talk about the indulgence.
And so we all went shopping at Lululemon. So at any rate,
I would say that one of the things I'm really looking forward to is the day that my wife and I can travel with our granddaughter when she gets a little older. Maybe we'll be going places with her parents. Maybe it'll be just the three of us. And there are just so many places I'd like to see with her. Part of the joy of being a parent to my own sons was traveling with them when they were younger and letting them see the world and us seeing the world through their eyes. I know that Road Scholar, which used to be called Elder Hostel, but now it's called Road Scholar, ROAD. They have tours that are specifically for grandparents and their grandchildren. So when the time comes, I'm really looking forward to, finding ways that we can go places together. And I don't know where and when, but I think it's going to happen somehow.
The time is coming. It just happened.
So before we wrap up, is there anything we haven't talked about on the topic of grandparenting and money that you want to be sure that we do? Pam, I'll let you start. On Terry, I'll let you finish.
No, I just think we keep it simple. I think when you're a new grandparent, and that was the point of this, when you're a new grandparent and you've got a million things you want to do, you want to travel, you want to help your child get a college fund started, you want to teach your child, these things are all in your mind. So it's like, just keep it simple. And if you don't have the funds to travel and you don't have the fund, you're going to use Zoom, which is, thank God it exists to keep you close, and you don't have the money to contribute, then you do have your own knowledge and your own life experience, in the financial realm that you can share that will make your grandchild so much smarter and wiser.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And Terry, anything else there?
I just want to say you do walk a fine line between being able to not impose, but exhibit your views of things that are financial. But your kids or grandchildren are always watching you. They're learning lessons that you don't specifically sit down to do. And if they catch you at the computer and you're paying your bills online, it's worth saying, you know how I get the money to pay my bills? That's the electric bill. It's because I work. But do you know what happens when I work and I get my paycheck? Almost half of it goes to taxes to run the government.
Yeah, who's
Sure.
Uncle Sam?
No, and even if they're 6 or 7 years old, and that's why I always set some money aside to save for an emergency, and then I pay my bills. Well, that's a lesson that could, it's just casual. You're not a financial, teacher guru or whatever, but the little lessons that you may pass on by example really have an important place in your grandchild's life. So, Richard, I expect you next time you're sitting down at your computer and you have a toddler on your lap saying, Grandpa's writing an article about money. A lot of people don't know how important it is to work for your money and to save some. All right, Grandpa, that's a lesson in itself. I'm looking forward to your joys as we do these podcasts in the future, Richard.
I'm going to live vicariously through you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I know it's already a grand time for me, and I know it's going to be even more so going forward. And I, want to wish the best to our audience. And if they are grandparents or are going to be one day, I congratulate them and I wish them best of success and luck and love and joy. And I hope you're as happy as I am too. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Friends Talk Money is funded in part by a grant from the Investor Protection Trust. The IPT is a nonprofit organization devoted to investor education. Since 1993, the IPT has worked with the states to provide the independent, objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions. Visit investorprotection.org. We also receive support from the North American Securities Administrators Association, known as NASA. It's the oldest international investor protection organization. NASA's members include state and provincial securities regulators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico who serve on the front lines of investor protection. Recognizing that education and awareness are powerful tools in the fight against investment fraud, NASA is pleased to sponsor Friends Talk Money. Here are 3 important tips to help you protect your money from fraud. With investing, there are always risks, so be cautious of anybody telling you that a certain investment is guaranteed. You should also proceed with caution if somebody is promising very large investment returns. This is a common red flag for investment fraud. Last and most importantly, be sure you're working with a licensed or registered financial professional. You can check your advisor and make sure they're licensed by visiting brokercheck.finra.org. NASA is your partner in keeping you safe and helping you avoid investment frauds. Visit nasa.org and click on the Investor Education tab to learn more.